city. There are people everywhere. The snow is falling white and pretty as I stroll on my way to you.
Hello friends, welcome back to the vlog. Today we are talking about all of the books that I read in 2022 so far. Now I only have the books out here that I gave 5 stars. We'll go through those in more detail, but I am gonna just go through with you and share all the books I read and kind of a general idea of what I think about them. We're just gonna spend more time on some of these. All right, also I'm drinking right now matcha nude. They sent me some of their matcha and I put in the brown sugar creamer from Trader Joe's, the oat creamer, and it is so good. It tastes like boba. I am so happy, you have no idea. We're gonna start with January's books. So the books that I did not give 5 stars, I read Court of Mist and Fury, Court of Wings and Ruin, Court of Frost and Starlight. All of those I gave 4 stars. I liked that series. It was fun to read, but it wasn't like memorably good. I also read The Midnight Library, which I did not like at all. And then the 2 that I gave 5 stars. Number 1, this is one of my favorite books that I read this year. It's Dusk, Night, Dawn by Anne Lamott. And it's just, I mean, I just think she's a brilliant writer. She is funny, but self-deprecating. She gives you like personal growth truths, but from a place of like, none of us have it figured out. She doesn't act like she's your guru. She's like on this journey with us. Highly recommend. Next was Neil Gaiman's Coraline. I never read this. I've never seen the movie. And I went into it blind and it was wild. It's also just like a delightful story. Neil Gaiman's an incredible writer and it's magical. Then we move into February. In February, I read The Witch Elm, The Court of Silver Flames, Come As You Are, and East of Eden. Court of Silver Flames is again part of the same series and I gave it a 4. I can't remember the name of the series. It's Sarah J. Maas is the author. The first book I read was The Witch Elm by Tana French. I love her, but all of her books are kind of similar, but they're all really fun to read. This book is like, there's a skull that gets found on like his family's property as he's recovering from like a mugging. It's really fun. It's like a fun mystery. And it's just like everything gets turned upside down. What you think is happening is not what's happening, and it's a blast. It's a really fun read. Okay, then East of Eden. This is, by John Steinbeck. I did not give Steinbeck a shot in my life until last year when I was reading through my bookshelf and was like, I have to read. And then he quickly became one of my favorite authors. Like, I can't believe I went most of my life without reading my favorite author. East of Eden is just like a classic novel. It's kind of a tale of good and evil. And like, who's to say which one's good and which one's evil? It's just a really fun book. Then I read Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. I heard Emily on the We Can Do Hard Things podcast. This book is all about like sexuality, female sexuality, all based in like sexual science. I just think sexuality is like a really interesting topic and the different ways that people approach sexuality, and it's very research based, which thrills me. The next month, March, I only read 1 book in March, and it was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I gave 5 stars. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love her entire world. I've read not all of her books, but most of them. I think they're a blast. This one was maybe my favorite ever. Maybe this or Daisy Jones and the Six, but just beautiful. You forget that these aren't real people. She writes the characters so well that I start to think they're real. Then The next book, or the next month, is April, where I read Atlas of the Heart, Anne of Green Gables, and The Body Keeps the Score. I gave Anne of Green Gables a 4. I think I'm glad I read it, but it wasn't, I mean, it's a book for younger people. I wish I had read it when I was younger, and then it could be like this nostalgic thing for me. But I did enjoy it. It was a really fun read. It just, you know, it wasn't like one of my favorite of the year. But what was is The Body Keeps the Score. If you can see all of the tabs from this book. If you haven't heard of Body Keeps the Score, it's essentially the textbook for body trauma and how trauma gets held in the body. It's, I mean, 100% like research based and experiential. Like, you're in this therapist's story of like how they're exploring PTSD in the body and how trauma affects the body and the nervous system. So fascinating. I think this is just a must read for anyone in a body, which is most of us, right? So that 100% obsessed. Highly recommend. Then Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. This was just like, my experience with this was that it was a reminder to pay attention to how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, how I'm acting, right? To just kind of be more mindful. And as I was reading it, I could kind of feel myself having more resources to respond the way that I wanted to respond to situations, to like be more of who I wanted to be in the world. So I love this. I also love this as a coffee table book because it's easy to like flip through and just like read little ditties here and there that are really meaningful. And I think a really cool opportunity for discussion. Next section is Sea of Tranquility. This is in May. I read Sea of Tranquility. It's like a sci-fi book about time travel. Very cool. But I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Hell of a Book. This is one of my favorite books of the year. It's by Jason Mott. It's a story of a writer. It's a National Book Awards winner. It's about this writer going on a book tour and just having to, everyone wanting him to talk about race, but him wanting to just talk about the book. And Obi said that one of his classmates said that this is a book for white people about race, and I'm interested in what that means for me. You know, I'm like fascinated by that as a concept, and how I do think that there are sometimes things that white people need to learn that people of color don't. But it was one of the most beautifully written books. It's hilarious. It's magical. I mean, I think it was just one of the best written books I've ever read. I honestly do. Even if the topic, well, I am like grateful that the topic was about race, and I'm happy to have like had this perspective. Even if it wasn't written about race, it's one of the best books I've ever read. Honestly, it's beautifully written. Obsessed. The next book I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I hated that book. I give it a 3 because I didn't want to give it lower. I don't like to be a critic, but I didn't like it. It just wasn't for me. And then I read Soul of the Helper, which was very good, but it just was, it wasn't like a 5-star for me just because it wasn't really written for me, but it was a good read. And then I read Crying in H Mart, which was not my fave. I liked reading about like the food. Korean food's some of my favorite food. I love like Korean family culture. I feel that like that's really cool to read about. But I didn't find the narrator very likable, which I found hard to do with memoir. Like, I found it hard to read. If I'm honest, I feel nervous to talk about it, but I think it's a cool read. I just don't think it was for me. I didn't really love it, but I did give it 4 out of 5. Like, I didn't give it like a 3 or anything. It just wasn't one of my favorite books of the year. Then we get into June, and I read Verity by Colleen Hoover, which I liked better. I am not a Coho fan. Like, I don't think she's for me, but Verity I liked better. I gave it a 4 out of 5. And then Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I also gave a 4 out of 5. And then we're into July. this is when I started. Malibu Rising was the beginning of me reading by season this year. So I really was like, I want to enhance my seasons by reading specifically to that season. So I started in the summer with Malibu Rising doing beach reads. So we're about to get into beach read like season right now, okay? It's happening right now. So in July, I read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I loved this book. The main female character could be me. She's like a redhead. Pretty sure she's a 7. She's like in love with her best friend, which I think is like I love that storyline of like friends to romance. It is a blast. They're in Palm Springs, which I love. It's one of my favorite places in the world. Just an absolute joy of a book. Loved. Then I read The Summer I Turned Pretty, which I gave a 4 out of 5. It's Not Summer Without You. This is all in that series. So Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, and We'll Always Have Summer. I read those back to back. I gave them all a 4 out of 5. For me, it was like, it's a fun read. It's not like my favorite book. You know, it's not like something I would recommend to other people, but I had fun reading them. Then I read another Emily Henry book, which was Beach Read. This one was really fun. This was like a enemies to romance story. Both of them are writers. The male protagonist reminded me of my husband, so I obviously fell in love with him. Very, very good. Then we move into August, where I read Every Summer After, which I gave a 3 out of 5. It just wasn't for me. Then I read Book Lovers, also by Emily Henry, also a 5 out of 5 for me. I really like her writing. I think this year I was like, oh, Taylor Jenkins Reid and Emily Henry are really like 2 of my favorites. And yeah, I really liked it. It's another one. It's like a writer and a publisher or an editor. They fall in love over the love of books. In a small town, I think in North Carolina. Yeah, in North Carolina, which is where I live. I mean, what else could a girl want? So it's really fun. It's another enemies to lovers story. Very, very fun. All right, next is The Unhoneymooners. I've heard people say that they hated this book, but I didn't. I loved it. I thought it was a blast. It's like, I think our main character here is either a 6 or an 8, which was fun to have a main character be. It's also enemies to romance, which I apparently like, and they like go on a honeymoon together even though they don't like each other, and then, you know, they spend enough time with each other, then magic is going to happen. And the next book that I read was Happy Homebody. That was cute. That was a really cute book. I don't know that, like, it was like a book about like making your home cozy, which I'm probably going to use in the winter to hoogify my life. And the next book I read was After I Do, which I gave 4 stars. It's a Taylor Jenkins Reid book, but if I'm honest, I don't know if I even remember what it was about. So I think that's like, when I think about my rating system, it's like 4 means I liked my time reading it, but I probably am not going to remember much about the book. And then we get into September. We start off September with One Italian Summer, and this one shocked me at how much I liked it. I thought I was buying just a throwaway novel that like was gonna be really like a fun read, but like not that great. But I loved it. It had like magical realism in it. It really surprised me. It's got like Italian vibes. The story was surprising. It wasn't predictable. It was really fun. It was a really fun read. Next book I read was How to Feel Better, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. And then I read The Wisdom of Your Body by my friend Hillary McBride, and as you can tell, it's really tagged up here. I don't know if you can see just like how much I've tagged it. It was a really good companion to The Body Keeps the Score. These two went together so well. Hillary does such an amazing job of talking about healing your body from like a compassionate place, from a self-loving place, and not from like a fixing place or like there's something wrong with you. She's also very like informed on the kind of things that I look for when I'm thinking about, I have like a history with restrictive eating, and so I'm very careful about what I read about my body and about bodies. Hillary is so safe in that regard, and it's just beautifully researched, beautifully written, and again, like these two books together, I just couldn't recommend more. So one of the things I did this year as well was read at least 1 or 2 nonfiction books between genres. So I finished up my beach read genre from the summer, and then I read Wisdom of Your Body, and then we moved into the fall books, which were mysteries, magical books, and I had a good fall reading season, and I cannot wait to share with you what I read. It started with Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. Here is the thing. I had personally never heard of Sarah Addison Allen, but my husband goes to college for creative writing, and the school that he goes to does like these authors nights, and she came to sign books and to read, and listening to her talk, I was like, I want to get one of her books. So I bought her newest book, Other Birds, and it was so fun. It was magical, and the characters were really interesting. I love like a really interesting character. This book is like really built around the characters. They all live in this little apartment complex, and they all have a really distinct character trait, and there's mystery, there's intrigue, there's magic. Yeah, and it's just, I couldn't recommend it more. I just think it's really, really fun. Magical read. I don't know, magical, I keep saying magical over and over, but that's the truth. The next book I read was A Silent Patient. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would. It's been on my reading list for a long time, and I think it's a good book, but I guessed the ending really fast, and that kind of took me out of it, you know? It was kind of like I was ahead of the author, and I don't think I was supposed to be, if that makes sense. So it kind of distracted me. My camera overheated, but we're back with House on the Cerulean Sea. Basically the perfect character arc for an Enneagram 6, and just an absolute gem of a read. The quote up here says, I loved it. It is like being wrapped up in a big gay blanket. Simply perfect, and that's exactly how I feel. The next book that I read, well, we're moving into October here. So the next book that I read was The Fairy Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I did not think I was going to like as much as I did. I thought it was going to be like just a throwaway book, like a fun little read. Maybe I give a 3 or 4 star, but no, like I loved it. I thought it was really fun. I thought she did a good job of making this like magical witch story more like socially applicable, and yeah, really, really fun, good book. The next book I read was The Thursday Murder Club. This was my favorite book in the month of October. It's about this like murder mystery that happens near a retirement home, and there's this Thursday murder club of these like retired people who meet every single Thursday and talk about different cases, and they get involved in the murder mystery, and they're all interesting characters. It's a really fun read. It surprised me in the end, which I love. Yeah, it was a blast. And the next book I read was Carrie Soto Is Back. This is another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. They introduced Carrie Soto's character in Malibu Rising, or at least that's the first time I saw her. So it's fun for her to have her own book. She was actually one of the more interesting characters, I thought, in that book. And she is definitely an Enneagram 8, and she's very, like, you just feel for her because she's so guarded, and you're just watching her kind of miss out on so much like love and safety because she's so guarded. You really root for her, I think. I really root for her. So very, very, very good book. Again, Taylor Jenkins Reid just does characters so well, and like she's built out this whole world that feels so real. Yeah, I love it. I love her. I told you the fall was good. Like most of these books in October are 5 stars. The next book I read was Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I was so excited to read this in October, and I'm so glad that I did. It's about this little boy who gets raised by the ghosts in a graveyard and his story of growing up, and it's just whimsical and fun, and you start to kind of wonder how he's going to do life, and you watch him grow up. And again, Neil Gaiman's just like one of the best writers I've read, and he didn't disappoint me with this one. So Graveyard Book, loved. The next book I read was At Bertram's Hotel by Agatha Christie, which I gave a 4 out of 5. It was fine. And then I read another TJ Klune book, which was Under the Whispering Door. This is a book about what happens after you die, and like an entire book written from the perspective of like, what if this is what happens after you die? And it's a love story. It's another gay love story, which I love, and it's cozy and fun. It's I think a young adult novel. Like I don't think it's like I think it's like a middle grade novel, but it's just, I mean, I read these in like 4 days, I think, both of his books, but it's so comforting and cozy and lovely and whimsical. It just takes you into this other world and you get carried away. And yeah, I didn't think I was gonna like this one nearly as much as I liked House on the Cerulean Sea, but I think this one ended up being my favorite. So yeah, highly recommend. I've said that enough. The next book is We're All the Same in the Dark, which I gave 3 out of 5, not my fave. And then I read Faithful Place, which I gave 2 out of 5. It was really not my thing. And then I read Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and it was definitely my thing. This was like a 5 out of 5 for me, obviously. And it is my last 5-star of the year so far. And it just is such a fun book. It's a murder mystery that happens at this hotel, or not a hotel, at this apartment complex. It's like twist after twist after twist. It had me like gasping out loud. It also had lots of really fun characters who have like a really interesting tie to each other. I loved it. After Faithful Place, I had this moment where I was like, maybe I don't like mystery novels anymore. Like maybe they're just not for me. But no, I was obsessed with this book. I read it really fast. I read it in 3 days. Yeah, it was so fun. So really, really fun. If you like mysteries, this is a good one. All right, the other 2 books that I've read this year are Call of the Wild, which not the novel that you might be thinking of. It's a book about like somatics and like trauma healing. And I liked most of that book. I think it's a good companion because I read Wisdom of Your Body, Body Keeps the Score, and then Call of the Wild. And I think those are 3 books that went really well together. But I think it kind of got off topic toward the end, and that kind of bothered me. So that's the only reason it didn't get 5 out of 5. I do think it like changed my life. So I feel like I'm not giving it the respect that it deserves. Like it was a really good book, but it just, toward the end, I kind of quit. I was like marking and highlighting the whole way through. And then like towards the end, it was kind of like, oh, I think we're off topic here, and just kind of lost interest. So that's on that. And then right now I'm reading I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. And that book I'm probably going to give a 3 or a 4 out of 5. So I think it's just not for me, but interesting book for sure. And that's every book I read this year. This has been such a fun reading year. The big thing that I changed this year was adding in the seasonality starting in the summer. I did summer beach reads. Fall, I did magical or mystery, or like murder mystery novels. And then in the winter, I'm doing memoir and short stories. And so I'm going to keep that going, I think, for at least another year. I don't know what I'm going to do in the spring yet. It might be like poetry. If you have an idea of what genre I should read in the spring, will you put it down in the comments? Because you probably have some ideas that I could use. So thank you all so much for joining me. I hope this one wasn't too boring, just kind of sitting down and chatting. But I will see you all tomorrow for day 5 of Vlogmas.